My wife doesn't pay much attention to the speeches I do make. She would kill me if I tried to make her listen to one I was never going to make. And just to keep on side with Blue Labour and my wife, today is the first anniversary of our marriage, and it's not quite how Sally expected to spend it. She's in the hall today, probably not paying much attention to what I'm saying as usual. But it shows to Blue Labour and Morris that I do family, even if I don't do faith and flag. The second thing wrong with the speech that never was that it didn't really address the world as I see it. A world in which the rich get obscenely richer and bankers cause a social crisis because of their reckless greed and then tell us that we're lucky to have them. A world in which climate change is getting worse and fast reaching the point where we can't stop it. A world of misery and insecurity for so many, and of growing wealth for a small elite who write the rules, who police it so that nothing ever changes. I can't remember a time in my political life when the gap between what is and what should be has ever been so great. Politics just isn't working. No one believes that anything that needs to be done can be done. The protests are ignored. Everything just carries on, getting worse. So we have a world of power without politics, as global banks and corporations determine everything. And so we have a politics without power, a politics with no ability to transform people's lives or even save them from the worst ravages of markets that are far too free. It means this, that an enormous gap is opening up between politics and people. And I don't think that Mrs. Miliband found any real answers to those problems on that long drive back from Manchester. On the surface, at least, British politics feels unable to bridge this gap. The Greens, they have a fantastic programme, as much emphasis on equality and democracy as sustainability. And Caroline Lucas is wonderful. This year here as a member of Compass. But Caroline and the Greens don't yet have a political strategy to save the planet. Today, Brighton, and in 10 years, Lewis isn't going to do it. And as for the Liberal Democrats, I have a great deal of sympathy for what's happened to them. A small, well-organised right-wing clique take over your party and make it do all kinds of things that you profoundly object to. Does that sound familiar? And then you get your treasured hung parliament, and the only people that want to talk to you are the Tories. And they make you end up doing all sorts of things you wish you didn't have to. It's been a traumatic year for the Liberal Democrats, and we have to understand that. Their real challenge, to prove that they can provide and deliver progressive outcomes, like they have on the NHS, and show that they can do pluralism to the left and not just to the right. Labour's challenge is different. It's to prove it can do pluralism at all. 1 year on, for Labour, it's not just speeches that never happened. It feels like it was actually a dream where Labour got just 1% more than Michael Foot in 1983. Instead of a sense of crisis and urgency and far-reaching renewal, there's been this toxic mix of complacency and denial. One more heave, but it seems to me, without any kind of heave. And more telling, even more telling, it sometimes feels like we never actually had a Labour government for 13 years with huge majorities. Yes, good things done, schools and hospitals rebuilt, but this country does not feel transformed, or it doesn't feel immune from the Tories. That's because in those 13 years, we didn't build deep moral roots for a good society or high walls to defend that society from the march of the market. Instead, we let the market in. Labour is yet to come to terms with its own relentless decline. of a political economy based on pumping up the city, pumping up house prices and tuition fees, privatisation of the post office, we paved the way for the Tories. We have to recognise it. We have to have a truth and reconciliation process with our past before we can become an effective opposition, let alone an effective government. But it's not just the policies of the parties that need fundamental change. It's the very style of our political processes that needs a paradigm shift. Because it seems to me that the new divide has opened up in Labour, one every bit as profound as the division between left and right. It is the division between extreme tribalists and us, the pluralists. It's a division about the way in which politics is done, and therefore it's about what kind of society we want to create. A mechanical, brute force style of politics, or one based on morality, democracy, and radical consensus building. John Reid and his ilk have had a veto over progressive politics, from working with Liberal Democrats and Greens to the slight improvement that was on offer over the alternative vote. I tell you, that veto just has to go, and we have to make it go, and fight for a Labour Party that is transformed into an open, democratic and pluralist force for change. So, you get the picture. Labour's in a bad place. I can see that the long arc of post-war social democracy, I think, has come to an end. War socialism, if you want to call it that, is finally over. In a world dominated by Facebook and not factories, social democracy has to change dramatically. This is an existential crisis of the left, not just in Britain, but across Europe. When, not if, the Spanish socialists lose, then just 4% of the European population will be governed from the left. 4%. This is a deep and abiding crisis. And in all of this stands our friend Ed, having to contend not just with this crisis, but with unreconstructed Blairites and Brownites who believe that it is their birthright to leave Labour. Attacked by Blair in The Sun on one day and supported by Blair in The Guardian the next. They never change. Let me be clear. In the face of this crisis, Ed has been too cautious. But we see in Ed a leader who shares our instincts, who needs our help, and yes, whose help we need. For be in no doubt, if Ed is replaced, it will be by someone far, far worse. Someone who wants to take Labour back to the old certainties of either Blairism or Brownism and would decisively be rejected by the British public for trying. We need to go forward much faster, not take a giant step back to someone who maintains that iron law of politics, that law that says that those who lead you into the wilderness cannot leave you out, because they will never, ever say that they were wrong. But this time, we can't wait for 3 or 4 election defeats. The planet won't let us. The poor won't let us. We have to force the pace of transformation. And we don't expect Ed to do it all for us. We will do much of it for ourselves. But we give Ed our constructively critical support. We live with no illusions without being disillusioned. Exactly the right approach. And in all of this, what of compass? It's been a tough year. It's been tougher than I expected. Labour has gone to sleep, and unexpectedly the centre-right coalition was the direct blow to our desire to see a centre-left coalition. And, to make it harder for ourselves, we decided to change our rules and let in people from parties other than Labour. It was a tough ask, but I think we were right to do it. We could not ask Labour to practice pluralism if we weren't prepared to do it first. Be the change you wish to see in the world and all of that. Exactly the right thing to do. We could not go on inviting Caroline Lucas or Evan Harris to be part of our project, but not accept them as equals with equal rights. How could we let in John Reid and Peter Mandelson and keep out Shirley Williams and Charlie Kennedy? It was the right thing to do. Getting a 2/3 majority through an organisation born inside Labour to open out was going to be tough. We would lose some people and we would be denounced by others. If we lost the vote, then I wouldn't have been able to continue leading this organisation. Democracy is a scary thing, but we had to try because it was the right thing to do. We did it openly and we did it properly, and it was passed. And I think we will look back and see it as a historic moment, not just for Compass, but for the wider progressive left. And through it all, and in everything else, I have the support and leadership of Gavin Hayes, Joe Cox and Zoe Gannon, the remarkable efforts of people like Ken Spurs, Victor Anderson, Robin Wilson, Luke Pearce at Compass Youth, Mark Cook, Ruth Lister, Sue Goss, Meg Russell, and hundreds of other activists and thinkers who give their time and their commitment to Compass because they believe in what we were doing. Tribal about our values, but pluralist about the way in which we seek to achieve them. The first question we ask, what do you believe in? Not what party you belong to. I'm a member of the Labour Party and I'm proud to be a member of the Labour Party, some of the time. But my real party card says, dare more democracy, instill greater equality and sustain a planet on which we can all live. The old politics just isn't working and it will never work again. We don't know exactly what the new politics is, but it looks something like what's in this hall today. Compass, by taking that big decision, has become a living experiment in the new pluralist politics of radical alliance building. And through it, we have built a home for those who want to transform Labour, a home to every social liberal and their radical tradition, a home to every Green who wants to be more than just right, a home for campaigners and thinkers for equality, sustainability, democracy, and a home for everyone who knows that those great historic causes cannot be solved in isolation, only together. A home for everyone who shares our vision of a good society. Compass, the home for people who work to stop the neoliberal reforms of the NHS, like Shirley Williams and Edmund Harris, and not those who kicked it off and push it today, like Mrs Thatcher, David Laws and Alan Milburn. Politics isn't working, so we have to make it work. A real plan B for the economy, and then a plan C, D and E. A high pay commission to rein in unearned and socially damaging rewards. Working with NEF and many others to create banks that work for people and not just for profits. An education system that teaches us the most precious gift of all, how it is that we live together. Compass Youth, growing and vibrant again because it's no longer a narrow Labour clique run in the interest of a small Trotskyist sect. Local groups flourishing. A progressive alliance of thinkers and campaigners meeting in London every month, building ideas and capacity. Links across Europe where the good society debate is really taking off, with people like Torben Albrecht, who's here today representing the German SPD. And young MPs like Lisa Nandy and Chuka Umanu rising fast but never selling out. All this now starting to take shape. Almost the entire leadership of the Green Party has joined Compass. People who want the very same things as the 250-strong conference of the Social Liberal Forum I spoke to last Saturday. Clever and well-organised people. Our people who just happen to be in the Liberal Democrat Party. Just 1 year after the trauma of the election, relations between social liberals and liberal socialists has never been stronger or more necessary. We will work with them to reform the banks and much more. Not a weak top-down deal, but a grassroots meeting of hearts and minds, a true alliance in the making. And Ed Miliband, a leader that we can do business with. He won't be entirely ours, and we certainly won't be entirely his, but we can help each other and work together as it should be. I can't tell you how long it will take, but I can tell you that we are getting there. A great man once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." It's not a stopwatch we have, but a compass. We can only build the good society on firm ground with patience, generosity, optimism, and the determination to stick by our principles, to take the tough decisions. But our time is coming. The current crisis of capitalism is far from played out, as Greece is showing. Global capital needs global rules, but there aren't any. So the crisis will continue. Next, there will be a food price crisis, then an energy crisis, and ultimately a climate change crisis, unless and until society and people rule over markets and profits. This, my friends, is just the start. The platform to do so much, to stop the poor getting poorer and the planet burning. We will do everything to reverse that tide. We have never been more determined and we have never been better placed. We are going to change the world because we have to. You know, my friends, it really, really, really can happen. Thank you very much.